Hi Year 12, welcome to your video tutorial. This video tutorial is intended for Stage 6 software engineering students studying the first unit of work for Year 12, Secure Software Architecture. Credits for the content and the knowledge in these video and accompanying slides goes to James King and his online resource on eForge, as well as the Year 11 software engineering course credits listed here. Okay, the syllabus dot point today is looking at how the capabilities and experience of end users actually influence the security design features of the software. So you may be able to design the most secure system, but there will always be a vulnerability. And the vulnerability that is so hard to mitigate in the whole system is the human being that is involved. The only way that you can somehow hope to mitigate it is by having a user-centered design approach. By constantly thinking of the user's experience as they move through your system, and also their capabilities and behavior, that will mean that you have the best possible chance of minimizing the user's potential effect or the vulnerability. You will lower the risk of the vulnerability that the human being interacting with your software system will potentially have or pose. Now, I have an adage in my classroom that we design so the user doesn't have to think. And that's usually just, so far we've talked about it as a pure user experience thing. You design so they move through and they don't have to wonder, oh, where's that button? Oh, where's that menu? Oh, where do I look for that? You want it to be so intuitive that they move through and can do it subliminally, like users often do on social media. They don't have to think, they don't have to wonder, they just scroll, double tap, swipe, whatever it particularly is. So some principles of user-centered design and basically a translation in more subject-specific terms of what quote-unquote not thinking looks like is simplicity. Simple user interfaces. From a design perspective and from a general software development perspective, we've been talking about simple design so the user doesn't have to think. With a security lens or a security hat on, simple interfaces reduce the chance of a user error. If the user sits there confused, there can potentially be issues, often prompting them to, oh, okay, I'm going to bypass that security protocol. Oh, I'm just going to share my password because it's too hard to sign that person up if it's too complicated to get into the system, which often lead to vulnerabilities that cannot be mitigated. Clarity, clear instructions, clear feedback loops. So the user is led to make the right choice. That's something as simple as appropriate messaging or guidance on passwords to just placing buttons in the right spot. If you make it easy, the user will follow. Transparency, explaining why they perform certain actions, not giving them an overwhelming amount of information, but, saying you need to use two-factor authentication to ensure that this and this and this is a reason. Simplicity, clarity, transparency. So what are some specific ways that the user can impact security? Well, even if you've designed it perfectly, there's always the human being involved, like I said. Weak passwords. If you don't set about the appropriate password mandate, or you don't do any kind of input validation, passwords will be weak. A user will want to write in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If 90% of users in the world could have every one of their passwords as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it'd be no repercussions, that would be one of the sole passwords for most people in the world. Sharing of passwords. Oh, here, just borrow my login. Very common. Socially engineered attacks also tap into that vulnerability of the human being involved. Things like phishing, people refusing to update software or failing to update software and therefore not having the latest security patches, very common. And disabling things like MFA or two-factor authentication. These things, no matter how secure your system are potential impacts. So if you give them good guidance on passwords, if you educate your users around phishing, if you prompt for and show them the benefits of updating software, and if you make it real hard, if not near impossible, to disable MFA or two-factor authentication, This will ensure that you have designed with the principles of along with these principles of user-centered design, will ensure that you are able to minimize, where possible, the effect of the user and their potential impact on the security of your system.